Miami landed their top-rated commit in the 24 class in surprise fashion. We're going to discuss how Miami was able to pull that off. Also, take a look at their defensive line recruiting and where things stand with five-star wide receiver Ryan Wingo. Let's bring on Azubi Charles with Kane Sport for this segment. How did top 50 wide receiver Jashiza Trader fly under the radar and commit to Miami on Thursday without anybody having any idea that he was going to make his decision?
Yeah, well, interviewing Josiah, these past 2 years, he's kind of the guy that kind of keeps a lot of things to himself. So just hearing him make this surprise decision isn't too surprising to me. With him, he's always been a quiet guy, not really talking, giving a lot of information about his recruiting. But Miami's been recruiting him for the better part of 4 years now, and it kind of finally paid off. I spoke with his head coach, Damian Jones, at Chaminade Madonna, and he was pretty much telling me, like, hey, I'm not too surprised at the decision, but I thought it was going to come earlier, which is something that surprised me. But Miami's efforts of recruiting Josiah Trader really, really paid off with him announcing that surprise decision Thursday. And really big for their recruiting class, with the momentum they're trying to build in July and keep it going in August and through the season.
Yeah, and this was a big three battle primarily. Florida State, Florida, Miami. What do you think it was in the end for JoJo Trader to pick the Canes?
I think it was that home field. His family had a really, really big part in this decision, specifically his mother. She's in Miami, obviously. She lives there. His family is there. So I asked him, what was the biggest thing for him? He said, I wanted to be home, and I'm home. So I feel like that home field, staying in his backyard, being comfortable in Miami was the biggest factor of his decision staying and playing for the Hurricanes.
So JoJo Trader, the number 9 ranked wide receiver in America, commits to the Canes. Now I'm going to ask you, does this help with holding on to fellow 4-star wide receiver Miami commitment Chance Robinson? Because I know primarily the Florida Gators have been after him, trying to flip him.
Yeah, I really do think it does help Miami with that, because they all played on the youth football program called the Miami Gardens Ravens. And I believe there's 6 players in that 2024 class currently committed to Miami that played for that youth program. And I spoke with their head coach, Rod Mack, who's a former Hurricane, and he told me the biggest thing with, keeping these local guys home, keeping these guys that all played on that youth team together, is their brothers recruiting him. And with now JoJo part of the class, Chris Wheatley-Humphreys, another guy that played for the Miami Gardens Ravens, Chance Robinson, and a bunch of other guys, I feel like they're trying to kind of rebuild this youth program that was a dominant powerhouse back in their day at the collegiate level, played together at Miami.
Yeah, I figured it might help kind of another hometown wide receiver being committed. So I'm going to ask you next, is it going to help with Jeremiah Smith? But before I do that, Miami fans, do me a favor right now. Like this video and subscribe to the On3 YouTube page. We got a lot more Miami recruiting to cover. So right now, Azubi, tell me, 5-star wide receiver Jeremiah Smith, he's committed to Ohio State. Does JoJo Trader, who's also teammates with them at Chaminade Madonna High School, does it help with the flip chances for Miami here?
I really do think it does. Honestly, I feel like you need everything in your book to try to flip Jeremiah Smith, and having his teammate, his lifelong best friend in that class now really does help them. But I feel like the biggest thing with Miami's attempts to flip Jeremiah Smith is showing that they can produce receivers at a high level, just like Ohio State has. Obviously, they can't replicate what Brian Hartline's done over the years there, but this year will be crucial for Miami to show, hey, I know you want to go somewhere else, but stay home. We can produce at a high level. Shannon Dawson has produced wide receivers at his previous stops, and Tank Dell in his time at West Virginia. So this year, I feel like will be very, very critical for Miami to showcase that, hey, we can produce high-level guys. Stay home, stay with your best friends, put on for your hometown. That's a big thing that, a lot of these South Florida kids, think about. I want to, make my hometown team great rather than going somewhere else and doing it. So I feel like adding JoJo Trader to the mix is very, very helpful for the Hurricanes, but the biggest thing is showing that they can produce high-level receivers in Miami for Jeremiah Smith to potentially flip to the Hurricanes.
Yeah, it's a big addition, and it also shows that, hey, there's big-time recruits that are considering the Miami Hurricanes. We're going to talk about 5-star wide receiver Ryan Wingo here in a minute, but I want to switch gears and talk a little defensive line recruiting. Last week, Miami picked up 4-star defensive lineman Artavius Jones, the number 166 best player overall. That was on Friday. He's an important piece in the class to go along with 4-star edge Marquise Lightfoot and Dalen Russell on that commit list. Let's start at the top of this list with 5-star edge Colin Simmons. He took an official visit to Miami earlier in June. Azubi, where do things stand right now with Miami's chances at landing 5-star edge Colin Simmons?
Yeah, with Colin Simmons, he kind of took a surprise, unofficial visit to the spring game to Miami, and then, took that official visit in June. And when we spoke to him after that official visit, he says he left Miami with no questions. They answered everything that he wanted to know. And with, that situation, I feel like it's a real battle between a lot of SEC programs trying to lure him to an ACC and Miami school. But I think things are, I wouldn't say, Miami's, trending for him right now, but they're not, outside looking in. I feel like they're kind of in the mix with everything. Obviously, like I said, schools like Texas, LSU are kind of the leaders for his recruitment right now, but I feel like Miami's giving him something to think about, specifically with that Jason Taylor connection. A lot of these defensive linemen, they're always saying, their biggest interest in Miami's come from Jason Taylor. And I feel like that's the case with Colin Simmons as well. So not saying Miami's trending, but I'm not saying Miami's completely out the picture with Colin Simmons, kind of somewhere in the middle where, hey, if something goes well during the season, I can see, Colin Simmons giving Miami an extra look or something like that. But I feel like they're kind of in the mix right now with him.
How about Dylan Stewart? Now, he's kind of said that he's going to make a decision before the season starts, but he's also told me when he was here in Nashville that he was going to take it the distance. So I know Miami's kind of sitting in the same spot with Dylan Stewart. They're definitely a sleeper team that you got to watch, but maybe a South Carolina or even an Ohio State is considered the favorite. Which bodes better for Miami, an August decision or if he takes this thing the distance and decides in December?
I feel like taking the distance type of thing for Miami, because with obviously coming off a 5-7 season, you don't have much to showcase guys saying, hey, we did this last year, we did blah, blah, blah last year. I feel like if Miami can show what they can do this year with, defensive line like Ruben May and a freshman, or Jaden Wayne has a good season, guys in that 2024 class will start looking at Miami and say, hey, these young guys are coming in and, making an impact in their first year and being a vital part of this defense. So I feel like the combination of, obviously Jason Taylor showcasing, his coaching ability and these kids actually performing, that'll be better for Miami in the long run if, things come down to December commitment, things like that.
Right. Another exciting name on the board is the number 2 rated defensive lineman in America, 5-star David Stone. Again, with him, there was so much buzz throughout the spring. Remember when he made those back-to-back visits, brought his mom on the second trip, and there seemed to be a lot of traction with Miami. Then he comes in for an official visit. But now that we're in mid-July, where do things stand with David Stone in Miami?
Yeah, with David Stone, every time I kind of think about that situation, it's like a roller coaster. Sometimes I think, Miami has this, this guy's Miami's, and then, oh, no, back down and up and down, up and down. Like you mentioned, those 2 back-to-back unofficial visits in the spring, and then his official visit in June. Right now, I feel like it's kind of stale. I'm not stale, but kind of just stagnant with that. Obviously, the dead period contact isn't, where it should be, or where, teams can actually reach out to players. But I feel like with this one, it's a battle between Oklahoma, Michigan State, and Miami. And I do say this because this third unofficial visit was the Mario Cristobal pool party that kind of everyone knows about. And I talked to him after that, and I was like, so, your third time here, just what have you seen? Obviously, you've seen everything that you possibly can see. Just has anything changed? And he said he saw a side of Miami that he's only seen at Michigan State and Oklahoma, with the familiarity with the guys, seeing the coaches away from the facilities and things like that. So right now, I feel like things are kind of, stand still with David Stone. He hasn't really been saying much. After his official visit, he really didn't say much. But I feel like if he gets another trip to Miami, that'll be very, very big for them, and kind of rebuilding momentum, because they had momentum in the spring, lost it a little bit, picked up momentum in the summer with the official visit, kind of lost it a little bit. So I feel like getting him back on campus would kind of be the biggest thing for Miami in their
season. Yeah, it really has been a roller coaster ride for David Stone. I mean, there's been moments where it felt like, boy, he might be ready to commit to Miami. And then a couple weeks later, he's at Oklahoma or something, and Miami's in the rearview mirror. So I agree with you, though. I do think Miami probably needs to get him back on campus in order to kind of seal that deal with him. But he's at IMG Academy, so it's not too far away from campus. All right, let's switch over to defensive lineman Aiden Breeland, another 5-star defensive lineman on Miami's D-line board. He goes 6'4.5", 320 pounds. He's the number 26 ranked player overall. Now, he's out of California, Zuby. Do you think that Miami has a shot at landing him?
Yeah, so this one's kind of interesting. Like you mentioned, he's out on the West Coast, but when I spoke with him during his first unofficial visit to Miami in March, he said Mario Cristobal was his first offer in 8th grade when he was at Oregon. So that's kind of the connection they have there. And I asked him, how important is that for you, seeing a guy that offered you in 8th grade and now you're back on campus, going into your senior year. He said that's huge, him keeping his word, him continuing to have faith in his production and things like that. And Breeland added Miami to his top 10 schools, and he's hoping to he took an official visit to Miami. He really liked it, but kind of now he's waiting, figuring things out. But I feel like that connection that, they had back in the 8th grade, obviously long time ago, but I feel like that small thing is kind of keeping Miami's chances alive. And if they can show him a few other things and his relationship with Chris Paul, they might have a shot at Aiden Breeland.
Yeah, some really good defensive linemen on the board. Could be an epic class this year for Miami in the trenches. We'll see how this all plays out. All right, I teased it at the top, 5-star wide receiver Ryan Wingo. He set a commitment date of December 20th. So I want to know, does the late decision, does that bode well for Miami? Does it hurt Miami? And where do things stand right now with Wingo and the Canes?
So with that late decision, I think it's the best possible scenario for Miami. With Wingo, I spoke with him about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he pretty much told me, since Kevin Beard arrived on campus, his recruitment is kind of amped, and he's kind of put Miami back in the picture. Kind of said, previously the other coaching staff wasn't recruiting him as hard, but Kevin Beard came in and really amped up things. And it's kind of funny. Before I spoke with him, I was speaking to somebody on staff at Miami talking about the receiver class, and they're like, if you could pick 4 receivers to, have a dream, 2024 receiving class, who would it be? I gave a few names. One name I didn't give was Wingo, and at the end of the conversation, they said, what do you think about Ryan Wingo? And that kind of turned my head. I'm like, okay, Ryan Wingo's a big name, but not too familiar with him, and didn't think Miami was really in the picture with him. Speaking with him, he says that. So I really think if he gets that later decision, which he plans on doing, that's great for Miami, because he did say that he wanted to see production from the wide receivers and see if they can produce elite level guys like the other schools that are recruiting him. So I feel like if Miami has a big year on that offensive side of the ball, receivers produce, Miami could be right in the picture with Ryan Wingo.
Yeah, and I think Wingo is generally open right now. I mean, you got Georgia, you got Tennessee, you got Texas, you got Miami. There's a lot of programs still involved with Ryan Wingo's recruitment. So, yeah, I do agree. I think this kind of, where Miami's sitting with him right now, I do think they can get him back on campus in the fall, show him a good time, and they'll have a shot to land him. So, all right, Zuby, great job on your debut on the Inside Scoop. Thanks for stopping by, talking a little Canes recruiting with us.
Thanks for having me today, guys. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for watching. Make sure you smash that subscribe button for me. And remember to check out all the videos on the On3 YouTube page.